with that expansion into so many markets, I can only imagine, how challenging it is to kind of manage liquidity. But were there any big learnings or lessons from doing so as far as like when it comes to expansion that you could share with us here?
A really big chapter of the bounce story was going through the pandemic. So 2019 was an awesome year for us. 2020 started great, and then the pandemic hit. It wiped out 99% of our revenue. We lost a ton of stores. It was like reversing a lot of the work we had done. So it was really challenging, but myself and the early team members, we just had this big vision for what we could build and what Bounce could become. We said, we're going to keep our foot on the gas and build this as big as we can. We built a lot of our SEO infrastructure, language translation, internationalization infrastructure. I think we even re-architected the code base during that time. Just all these things to really make the ship really solid. And then when things really started coming back, we just grew incredibly fast. But there's some key stories in there about liquidity. So yeah, the topic of marketplaces, they really only work if you have supply and demand balanced. Now we had, all of our demand went away. How do we keep these partners happy? How do we keep these partners engaged? One liquidity issue that we saw during the pandemic was stores might not have seen a bounce booking for a few months. And then, these are small businesses or hotels that might have new staff every few months or a new team member. And so someone would make a bounce booking and they'd show up to the hotel and then they would say, "Oh, what's bounce?" And we're like, "No, no, like you represent bounce. Don't let that's a bad customer experience." And so we had to think really strategically about that liquidity problem. And so because our volume had fallen so low during the pandemic, what we did was we built these notifications where if a store got their first booking in 30 days, we would have customer support, which was like one of the 5 team members at the time, call the store and say, "Hey, you guys have a new booking. Are you ready for it?" And if they were, all good. If they weren't, then we would re-educate the store or the new employee before the customer showed up. So that worked really well. And that also allowed us to keep our foot on the gas with supply acquisition. We were building all this long-term infrastructure, internationalization. We were expanding our supply base across Europe during the pandemic. And basically, that would have all been futile unless we had built these tools. So signing up all these stores during the pandemic was difficult because it was like doing so with a blindfold. You don't know if it's the best supply. They might not get a booking for a while. So I would say we definitely got a crash course in marketplace liquidity by continuing to push bounce during the pandemic.